Good morning. Today I want to cover 4 more sections from the Spake Christopher, my treatise on non-duality in theory and practice, and an explanation of how I try to live my life. Okay, so let's see if I can share my screen. And I just need to take care of a couple of things here before I am ready. Okay, and as usual, if you go to www.docbenton.com, go down to the section, The Best of Doc Benton, and right here you find Thus Spake Christopher. You can open that up or right-click on and download it and read the whole thing yourself. But today I'll read sections or chapters 25 through 28. And there's a little bit of math involved in this one. Okay, so let's begin. Chapter 25. The man asked, "Cannot science explain everything?" I began to answer. Many might think so, but mathematics has shown us that this is not the case. The first crack in such thinking appeared in the late 1800s, with George Cantor's invention of set theory. Originally, Cantor and others thought of a set as just another word for collection, and that we could make anything into a collection. However, a problem arose because in set theory there is a well-defined way to take any set and use it to create an even larger set. And this also led to an understanding that even infinite sets can be used to create still larger infinities. However, suppose we take the set of everything, which we might also call, somewhat naively, the set of all sets. In that case, how can we possibly create something that is bigger than everything? On the one hand, we can't, but on the other hand, set theory says we can. And this conundrum is what is known as Cantor's paradox. Eventually, this paradox within mathematics was sidestepped by reformulating set theory in terms of axioms that would allow us to do all the usual mathematics that we want, while also prohibiting the construction of things like the set of all sets. However, this only sidestepped the mystery without fully understanding it. And then, to further perplex people, the mathematician and logician Kurt Gödel demonstrated that there are an infinite number of mathematical statements that are true that, nonetheless, cannot be derived from the axioms that govern most mathematical systems. Put together, these results suggest that the totality of all things is unknowable, and that not all truths can be derived from logic alone. This was also intuitively understood by the ancient sage known as the Great Huna, who said in the Book of Commentaries that all that we can perceive are only parts of the ways of the Holy One, and not the Holy One itself. Additionally, we might say the same thing about the null set, the set that contains nothing. Usually, when we think of nothingness, it is only a relative nothingness, such as an empty box. There is a type of emptiness there, but only with respect to something tangible, such as a box. In contrast to this, an ultimate emptiness would be void of all concepts and perceptions, including the box, and even void of the thought of the lack of all concepts and perceptions. One may merge with such a void, but the void itself is utterly beyond perception in the manner that we usually perceive objects within our world. Hence, both the void and the totality are incomprehensible and unperceivable, and as such they are indistinguishable from one another. However, we can see the effects of each, and if it weren't for the void/totality, there would be no world of objects to perceive, since the void-totality mystery appears within our existence as our very awareness. Additionally, one could say that the totality must obviously contain the void. And the void must contain the totality, because if the void didn't, then lacking the totality would be a perceivable defining characteristic of the void that would stand outside of the void. And the void would then be something perceivable and definable by this particular lacking, rather than a complete and incomprehensible total nothingness. Thus, if we represent the null set or void by this symbol for the null set, and the totality of all things by U for universal set, then this leads to the equation that the null set equal the universal set, which few people seem to understand. That is unfortunate, since this equation also represents, in my opinion, the highest level of enlightenment. Everything is the void, and the void is everything. Thus spake Christopher. I'll briefly remark that technically a lot of mathematicians, rather than the ultimate universal set, they would probably want to call this the universal class, since they would exclude the totality of everything from set theory. Okay, either way, the concept is still the same. The void is everything, and everything is the void. Okay. Chapter 26. The man then asked, "What are equivalence relations and quotient structures? And why do you say that they are important?" I began to answer. An equivalence relation is a relationship in a set of objects that acts in a way that is similar to equality between numbers. In particular, for any three objects, A, B, and C, that are involved in an equivalence relation, it will be true that 1, A is equivalent to A, reflexive. 2, if A is equivalent to B, then B is equivalent to A, symmetric. And 3, if A is equivalent to B and B is equivalent to C, then A is equivalent to C, transitive. The bottom line is that an equivalence relation between objects acts similarly to equality between numbers. And additionally, an equivalence relation will always divide the elements of our set into discrete subsets. In this way, we can also think of an equivalence relation in terms of having a collection of boxes in front of us, and we put each object that we have in one and only one box. For example, our set of objects might be the counting numbers 1, 2, 3, and so on, and our boxes might be labeled even and odd. In this case, every counting number will go into one box or the other, but never both, and numbers that are in the same box will be considered equivalent to one another when we are at the level where we see only even or odd. Okay. Furthermore, in mathematics, we call our set of boxes a quotient structure, since we like to think of them in terms of having canceled or divided out the difference between the various even numbers in one box and the various odd numbers in the other box. These concepts are important because they go a long way towards explaining the world we see. For example, anytime the pieces of any puzzle come together within our minds, we are forming a quotient structure. Thus, when our minds combine several objects together to form a structure such as a chair, then the chair becomes the quotient of the pieces that comprise it. In this case, our mind temporarily negates the differences between the pieces and sees only the whole. In a similar way, the forest is the quotient of the trees, and it is brought about by seeing the whole and no longer focusing on the difference that distinguished the individual trees. The concept of a quotient structure is important because it models how we construct reality with our minds. Almost every experience we have is a quotient structure made from more fundamental pieces that have come together. In particular, if an artificial intelligence were to accurately mimic human sentience, then it too would have to be capable of constructing such quotient structures. But what if we put everything we know into just one box? What if we make all things equivalent to one another? In this case, we would also make everything indistinguishable from everything else, and this totality with no distinctions would also be indistinguishable from the null set of no distinctions, i.e., the void. Hence, once again, we arrive at the equation the null set equal the universal set, the void equal the totality. Thus spake Christopher. Chapter 27. The man then asked, what is meant when the book of the assembler says that there's nothing new under the sun? I began to answer. The phrase under the sun refers to the world of physical objects that we perceive every day. At this level, all creation is only something from something creation. That is a result of making rearrangements and permutations of what is already present. Mathematically speaking, permutations always result in cycles. And in a finite world governed by cycles, a point is eventually reached where every new permutation is simply a repetition of one that has already been. Thus, eventually, there is nothing new under the sun. However, the phrase itself suggests that perhaps there's another realm that is above the sun. And if so, then this would refer to a non-physical realm, such as the realm of thought. In this realm, we can engage in combining previous thoughts to create insights that we haven't seen before. And this is how we participate in something from nothing creation. In the book of channelings, it says, the new heavens and the new earth which I am making shall remain before me. And in the book of radiance, it says that these new heavens and the new earth are created by our insights. In other words, every time we have a new idea or new insight, it literally creates a new heaven and earth. Neither the physical realm of objects nor the non-physical realm of thought is the same afterwards. And new insights put new pieces on the chessboard in the world that is under the sun. Hence, through insight, we can engage in something from nothing creation and bring new things into existence that have never been seen before. And through this creative power, we can make the world a better place. Thus spake Christopher. Chapter 28. The man asked, where is heaven? I began to answer. It has been said that heaven is within you. If so, then heaven is a state of consciousness, a state of being. Likewise, if heaven is within you, then so is hell. In the wisdom books, it says that Moses was not able to enter the promised land because the people had made him angry. In other words, once Moses succumbed to anger, he kicked himself out of paradise. It is thus we who create heaven or hell within ourselves on a daily basis, and we who kick ourselves out of the promised land. And when we are filled with joy, we are in heaven, and that joy fills us with light. And when we are filled with heaven and joy and light, then we can extend that joy and light to the world outside of ourselves in order to create heaven on earth. That is what each of us should do. Thus spake Christopher. Okay, that concludes the 4 chapters or sections I want to cover in this video. So let me stop my sharing. And I'm back. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked the mathematics. And I hope you join me again next time. So for now, I'll just say so long and be well.